Hello and welcome back to Archaeosoup Towers on a very special day. Today, Archaeosoup is 10 years old. I have been ladling out the soup now for a decade. Wow. And actually, to celebrate that, let's kick things off properly by doing something I haven't done in quite some time, and that is blowing some celebratory bubbles. I sort of got out of the habit of celebrating milestones, and it's about time we brought back that tradition. So here we go. Superb. I don't know how that's affected the lens there, but hopefully not too much. Superb. So the bubbles have been blown, the celebration is officially underway. Archaeosoup is 10 years old, and today I want to share with you maybe a couple of things that I've hinted at over the years, but actually I suppose the origin story in its fullness has never really been publicly shared. So today I wanted to share with you the steps that led into Archaeosoup and why it is now 10 years later I am here today with a very fancy party hat on. So I've made some notes appropriately. Eagle-eyed followers of Archaeosoup will note that this version of the channel was started in December 2010, December the 3rd, 2010. And interestingly, there was a version of Archaeosoup before this iteration of Archaeosoup. So even though December 2010 is when the YouTube channel began, the origins of Archaeosoup were actually in March 2010. I was recently engaged and had moved back to the northeast of England to marry my lovely wife. And I had been working at the York Archaeological Trust as an archaeologist and Viking.
Eowils is a renowned berserker, a valued warrior on the battlefield and a terror to the Mercians. He has strewn the meadows of the Danelaw with the bodies of the dead, providing rich carrion for the crows.
Obligatory berserker shot there, I think. But nonetheless, at this time I had moved back to the northeast, and I say back to the northeast because I came to the northeast of England originally to go to university from North Wales. And it was great to be back in the northeast. I love people in this part of the world. It feels like home, you know, it feels good to be here. But it was a very difficult time in terms of finding work. We were still absolutely in the aftermath of the so-called credit crunch, and really actually the northeast has never really recovered since, from that. But anyway, it was a very difficult time, particularly for archaeologists to find work. And people often use the word decimate in these circumstances, but actually technically decimation isn't that bad. It's 1 in 10. When people go they were decimated, you imagine actually it's more like 9 out of 10, and that's closer to the mark in terms of the archaeological jobs market back then. So I was trying to find some work and trying to stay sane, and initially I had a vague idea that I wanted to use my skills that I not only learned at uni but also then developed while working at Jorvik and for the York Archaeological Trust, in terms of speaking to the public. Ironically, can't even say archaeology or archaeological. I wanted to use those skills possibly to start a business, to create my own niche, as it were, since there were no jobs floating round. And the very first idea that I had was something called Tyne Tees Vikings. And the logo that I made on that day was this. It's very much based on Norse carvings, and at the time I was imagining that I would start a sort of maybe a group, like a quasi-reenactment educational group. And there are similar enterprises across the UK, and I thought, well, actually Tyne Tees, maybe I could do something here. Now, this was also actually at a point when I hadn't lived in this part of the northeast of England for that long. And since then I've realised there are an awful lot of reenactor types around. And I'm so glad that I didn't fall into that particular trackway, in so much as what I do is very varied with Archaeosoup. I think Tyne T's Vikings would have been limiting and limited in that sense. But things were plodding along, and I was developing this idea from that point onwards. And really, that's the birth of Archaeosoup, was as Tyne T's Vikings and a Microsoft Paint logo that I put together. And throughout that time, obviously, wedding prep was occurring. We were married in September, 1 week after my birthday, actually. That's really handy, actually, for me to remember that, or be able to remember that. It's 1 week after my birthday and about a week before my wife's birthday. Anyway, things were plodding along, and when you're doing things like wedding prep, you know, it feels like you're the person who's got the topical injury, you know, of the day. So people come up to you and go, "So, how's the wedding prep going?" And it's almost like you have to say, yes, my broken arm is fine, before you can say anything else to someone. Yes, thank you for asking, it's fine. And at the time, it was very much, it felt like that. You know, before you could have a meaningful conversation with anyone, you had to tell them how the wedding prep was going. And it got to a point where I was a little bit cynical and irritated, and I would kind of just go, "Well, actually, it's about a week on from last time you asked me, a week ago." Yeah. So, in the context of going slightly crazy with wedding prep and trying to find a job, I started a YouTube channel, and by then I had the Tyne T's thing had morphed into Archaeosoup, and the origin of the name Archaeosoup, I have discussed this elsewhere, but I'll mention it here as well as a definitive documentation. Is in back in uni, I was a bit of a nerd. Goodness me, a nerd, really? Bit of a nerd, and I entered a competition on the internet to insert Campbell's soup tins into historic photos. It's very, very specific. And the competition entry requirements were that you started a Flickr account and that you tagged the competition giver with your photo, or on your photo, so that they would know that this was an entry. And in order to start that account, you had to create a username, and I chose Archaeosoup. I was an archaeology student. It was a soupy competition, and it would be several years later when that name would come back to me. Archaeosoup. And since then, it's funny actually, the fashion for taking the beginning of the word archaeology and putting it onto something else really took off in the past decade or so. But at the time, not a lot of people would that I knew anyway, in terms of archaeologists, were doing that for Twitter, etc. Was Twitter around then? I think it was. Anyway, for usernames, etc. So I was quite interested in this. Archaeosoup. And it occurred to me that actually, not only would it be archaeological, but also a bit of everything would go into the soup. It could be a great excuse to fold in artistic endeavours, filming endeavours, drama, plays, this kind of thing. It wouldn't be Tyne T's Vikings, it would be Archaeosoup, archaeology soup in that sense. And I started a YouTube channel called Archaeosoup. But it's not this channel that you're watching this video on, it was the previous Archaeosoup. You see, Archaeosoup at the moment, the username is ARCH AE. No, I can't even spell archaeology. Okay, I've got it written down. ARCHAEOS0UP. So like elite speak almost for soup, S0UP. Previously, I had a YouTube channel called Archaeosoup where there was no zero, it was just Archaeosoup. But I accidentally deleted it in such a way that YouTube refused to acknowledge me as the owner of it. I don't know what I'd done or how I'd done it, but basically I completely ruined the username Archaeosoup for my use then. It may well be usable again now. I don't know, but yeah, I ruined it, and so I had a few nascent videos, a few sort of experiments on that YouTube channel, and then it was gone, poof. And it was then around about December that I decided to start again, to try again, having been a little bit disheartened. But in the context of getting married in September, then into October, November, before you know it, it's December. At that point, I thought, okay, we're coming up to Christmas. I want to start again. Let's do that. Let's do this. And I did. So on December the 3rd, 2010, this YouTube channel was started. And so you see, it is the same year. It's still 10 years on from 2010, but that's the reason for the discrepancy between December 3rd for this YouTube channel and March the 11th for the beginnings of Archaeosoup. And actually, it should also be said that in 2010 I was experimenting with the form and format of how I would talk about the past and how I would present to people. So I did a couple of experiments with friends' children, offering them a free activity afternoon, teaching them this kind of thing, and they enjoyed it. And I think I had a couple of minor school workshops, but it was all very experimental. But nonetheless, it started today, 10 years ago. Now, you may or may not know, depending on when you started following this channel, that wasn't the previous channel being deleted wasn't the first time I suffered a massive setback in terms of YouTube and these videos. It was, let me see, there or thereabouts, June 2011. I think it must have been May 2011 when I accidentally deleted all the videos off this channel. I think now it's much more difficult to you have to, I think it's a 3-step authentication when you want to delete everything on your YouTube channel. Back then, I don't know how I did it, but one afternoon I was up to the letter M, I think, or was I beyond M? I was certainly more than halfway through the alphabet in the A to Z of archaeology, and I just deleted the whole YouTube channel. It was all gone. And my lovely wife, Mrs. Soup, came home to me. This was obviously, we'd been married for less than a year at this point. I was still trying to find work, but also this A to Z was keeping me sane while I was sort of sharing my knowledge with people, and it was a good leveler for me emotionally while I was still looking for work, in this very difficult job market. Frankly, I wasn't even looking just for archaeology jobs. I was looking for anything at that point. So she came home and she describes it as though I was just in some sort of trance. I was just rocking back and forward on the floor in front of the sofa, staring at the corner of the room, just sort of, biting my fingernails or something. And she's like, "Are you okay? What's wrong? What happened?" And then I was like, "It's all gone." And at this point, now, I have thousands of videos on this channel, but at that point I think maybe there were 100 possibly, because I was also doing some news coverage as well, I think, and a couple of other videos, and at that point it just felt insurmountable, to go back and redo all of those. But thankfully, at that point I was also keeping scripts of everything, so I had notes for all the videos that I'd done in the A to Z at least. And I made a list, a document that I still have on the computer called Dead Videos, a Word document, Dead Videos, and after a couple of days of wondering whether or not I want to actually, do I want to go back into this? Do I want to do archaeology? After a couple of days, I started again. And so you will notice that on A to Z of archaeology, it comes on the 1st of June 2011. So this is one of those weird things. If you're super eagle-eyed, you may notice that the YouTube channel has its origins on December the 3rd, 2010, and then its first video is on is in June 2011, that's because I deleted like 6 months worth of work back in 2011. And since then I've been really paranoid about that. I double check everything because sometimes you have to delete a video, or you have to, when you want to modify something, or when the edit changes, you have to go. It's just good practice not to have it sitting there gumming up your account. But every time now I delete something, I sort of, okay, just this one, and click. Okay, we're safe. Because it was traumatic. It was deeply traumatic. And really, since June 2011, the YouTube channel that you've come to know and love, hopefully, is what it is. And here we are today, a decade worth of work with 6 months or so deleted at the beginning. And I want to celebrate this. And I think that this deserves more than just one video. I think actually I want to have a year. I want to have a sort of a jubilee celebration for 10 years of Archaeosoup. And this is partly because of all the wonderful support and reviews and messages and stuff that people have sent me over the years. All this stuff behind me, for example. Means so much to me and has kept me going through some. There have also been ups and downs in terms of my prospects doing this and so on and so forth. It's so big and so important to me that I want to celebrate it for a year. And with that in mind, I'm going to do several things. And also, actually, I want to get your suggestions as well. So please do comment below if you have any additional requests or suggestions. But thing number one is I want to create a sort of a watermark, a logo that celebrates and marks out all the videos made in the 11th year. So in the year celebrating 10 years of Archaeosoup. And actually that is what is currently the YouTube channel logo of it. Today, maybe for a week, maybe for a year, I don't know, I haven't made my mind up yet, that will be the YouTube channel logo. So this watermark will appear on videos at the beginning, probably at the beginning, 5 seconds or so, on every video for a year, I think. So that's number one in this sort of Jubilee celebration. I want to revisit the audio quality on the A to Z of archaeology. It's a series that I hold very dear. I'm not going to delete any of those videos, don't worry, but I want to take a grab of them and redo the audio on them, because the audio isn't great. At the beginning I was just recording on an iPhone, so I was just speaking into the phone. That was the voice, that was the audio quality. So especially when you cut away from me speaking to camera, or even speaking to camera, I'm speaking to my phone on the A to Z series. So I want to revisit the audio quality in like a special edition of the A to Z. I think that's probably worthwhile doing over the course of a year, and it's also, I think, very doable, very achievable to do that. I may or may not alter some of the stuff in the videos. It depends on if I think something is egregiously out of date or requires an additional note or two. But ultimately, yeah, I don't want to be George Lucas here. I don't want to completely ruin something good by having a special edition of everything. So, but I think redoing the audio, I think, is a good idea. Number 3, I would love to do some interviews and some special site visits to celebrate Archaeosoup's 10th year. I'm not sure who I want to interview or where I want to go yet, but I've got a year, and I would like to do that. So I'm going to try and find. So this is a great excuse to try and find some key people or key places to go to, and feature those people over the course of the next year or so. Number 4, I would like to, or indeed I'm going to, migrate the Archaeosoup blog, which has been on Blogger now, ever since it started, to a WordPress-based site, essentially for two reasons. First of all, Blogger is basically dead. Google have more or less abandoned Blogger as a platform. And originally, when I started the blog, you could use, for example, the app on your phone to make blog posts, which were acceptable in terms of formatting. That's no longer the case, and it's made me less inclined to write on that blog. And I think that's a shame. And also, actually, there are other people who now want to write on the blog as well. Chiara, who wrote a wonderful piece about Bronze Age shipwriting, has a series in mind, 3 posts in particular, 3 blog posts about Bronze Age clothing that she'd like to put on the blog. And I sort of said, well, yeah, that's great, thank you, wonderful, great idea, and I'm sure people would love to read it. But not there. It's a terrible website, and I want to move that stuff to something, like the Skyrim Archaeological Survey website that Liv and I set up for that. So I want to move the blog to a more healthy blogging platform, and hopefully that will also mean that I find it easier to ramble on and make notes of interesting thoughts and ideas, or expansions of ideas on this YouTube channel. A cake. A cake is in order, and to celebrate this 10th anniversary, I have decided to print a photo mosaic on a cake. This is the mosaic, incidentally. I made it yesterday. It was really nice going through 10 years worth of Archaeosoup photos. There's lots of different things going on the mosaic. You can probably well, actually, I went all the way back to the very first image I put on the Facebook page. So the old, some of the oldest stuff is in there, along with some of the newest stuff. You may notice the screen grab at the top, where I'm looking, well, a bit derpy in the watching brief. Some people may say I always look derpy, but to those people I say, pa. However, this photo mosaic, I've printed it onto a cake, and I want to share that cake with friends and family, and I think this evening we'll have a piece as well. So the cake, we have a cake to celebrate 10 years. Of course we need a cake. We've got bubbles and a party hat, you need cake. Number 6, I was, emphasis on was, planning on making a push to go to Orkney this summer. I was even thinking of asking if you guys would like to consider making lists of things that you wanted to see on Orkney, etc. But I'm not sure, given the public health issues that are ongoing at the moment. Apparently, if you say the word beer virus, there is a beer after all called that. And, if you say the word, apparently then YouTube doesn't show your video to anyone at the moment for some reason. Inciting panic, or maybe spreading rumours that garlic will heal you. Anyway, I had wanted to go to Orkney, but I think it looks like it's likely to be precisely that time of year that the virus will be at its worst. So maybe that's not a goer this year, but something like that would be amazing. Maybe I should pick another site that's not quite so difficult to access or to get home from if services shut down or whatever, or if people are given mandatory isolation. There'll be something. Maybe going to Conwy, maybe making an in-depth sort of exploration of Conwy Castle, my favourite castle. Possibly going to Dinas Bran near Llangollen. Back home, that could be interesting. I'll have a think. But 6 was going to Orkney, although Mrs. Super suggested that maybe we could go to Orkney next year now, and make that make the 10th anniversary a jumping off point for going into Orkney in the near future. And number 7 is that I want to wax lyrical every now and then about the lovely people I have met over the course of the past 10 years. These probably won't be very long videos. They'll probably be little features, just exploring interesting characters, interesting moments, not always archaeologists either, actually, but people who I've enjoyed working with, who I've met, and who who've also had an impact upon me and what Archaeosoup is over the course of the next year. So every now and then, a little insight into someone special, I think would be a good idea. And that, I'm very aware, is 7 things to celebrate 10 years. So maybe I need to add at least 3 more things to this list. And with that in mind, I invite you to comment below. Add to the list. What would you like to see us doing to celebrate 10 years of Archaeosoup? So there we have it. 10 years of Archaeosoup. I can scarcely believe it. I've seen this coming for a while now. Back in January I was like, oh goodness me, 10 years. But at that point I was thinking all about the BMX archaeology project and just getting that done. And also, incidentally, what a wonderful way to round off those 10 years with that film, with that project, with those people. 10 years. Thank you for watching. Thank you for engaging with my quest to share honest and open conversations about history and archaeology with you guys, and long may it continue, so long as it may continue. 10 years, crazy. Right, one more bubble blow and then I'll let you go. Here we go. Actually, who am I kidding? 2 more. 1 more now. Yeah. 10 years, guys. Thank you for such a wonderful decade. Mwah. Bye-bye.